Okay, this thing's telling me that we're live. We probably are. Okay, cool. All right, everybody. Well, this is our every now and then Wildcat recording video feed. Thanks for being here. Hope you enjoy a little sneak peek behind the scenes as we record our podcast episode. So I'm going to count back from 5, and then Jake, you're going to kick it off as usual.
Yep.
5, 4, 3.
So, Kip, what are we going to talk about today in episode 210 of the Cyber Risk Management Podcast?
It's an episode about boards of directors and how they're actually thinking about generative AI. And what we want to do today is avoid what the headlines are saying. We don't want to repeat what vendors are pitching. We want to know, what does the conversation really sound like when board members sit down and wrestle with this? And I can't think of anybody better to help us do that than Vanessa Pegueros. And why? Well, because she sits on boards. Live Person, she's on that board. BECU, one of the biggest credit unions in the country. Presidio. She's also a venture partner at Flying Fish Partners. She's actually investing in AI and ML startups. So, and to top it all off, she's a former CISO at DocuSign and US Bank. So I could not think of a better person to invite onto the show because she's got so many different perspectives that she can bring in. Now, before I welcome Vanessa back to the show, I want everybody to know that Vanessa was our guest in episode 152, and in that episode, she talked about cyber risk management at the board level, and I think that if you like the episode today, you should go back and listen to that one as well. Okay, Vanessa, welcome back.
Thanks, Kip. It's great to be back with you and Jake for yet another episode. Yeah, you pretty much summarized what I've been up to. I think I get this unique perspective from a board level on what these conversations are like, whether it's cybersecurity, in this case, AI. We're going to talk about that. And I also I think what's great is I was an operator for many, many years, and I was on the other side of the board, and now I'm in the board, and now I can understand both perspectives and the challenges of sometimes communication or other aspects of these complex topics.
And no doubt you probably see the CISOs coming up at you and you're just like, was I like that? And you think back and you go, probably. Oh, well.
Yeah. It's a variety of CISOs. Sometimes the more technical the CISOs, the more challenging it is to talk to the board. So yeah. There's always, that part. But then, there's benefits of this very technical CISO, as we know. So
definitely. Okay, well, let's
Excellent.
get right to it. So, Vanessa, when generative AI comes up in a board meeting, and by the way, I think generative AI risk is definitely adjacent to cyber risk. At least that's what I'm seeing unfold. So, but when it comes up in a board meeting, what does that conversation actually sound like?
Well, I mean, you think like a board should have everything figured out. Well, these are the people that hire and fire the CEO. These are the individuals who are watching the financial performance of the company. But there is so much change occurring around us in terms of technology and other aspects, geopolitical, all kinds of change. I think boards are just wrestling with their own evolution around how to govern with AI. And I think the challenge can be that, sometimes people look to the board to have the answers, and they don't. They are learning as well. And depending on the board's own individual member competency around technology, that could be a very challenging thing for the board to kind of get to consensus around what to do or a direction to take. So I feel the boards are just having, like, as executive teams, CEOs, CIOs, CTOs, as they are like similarly sitting around and trying to figure out what to do with AI, how to allocate money and the spend around it. I think boards are also challenged with that, but feel an incredible responsibility, fiduciary responsibility relative to the company. I think you have differences, with boards in terms of, highly regulated boards compared like a credit union versus, I'm on the board of Live Person, which by the way, we just sold to Soundhound. So been quite busy with that transaction.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And Live Person being just a technology company in AI, the assumption at the board level that AI is just part of everything is just accepted and expected. And I think with highly regulated environments like a credit union, we have to put a lot more thought into it. We have to be very careful around what we adopt and the risks that we're taking. So there are some definite differences. And a private company, like, because I'm on a small private company, they are just grappling with, hey, can we make it through the year with the cash we have? And
Yeah.
so all very different kind of experiences at the board level.
Just sounds like you're going from one bubble of perspective to another bubble of perspective. I got to imagine it can be hard to keep it all straight.
I think it's really it's challenging, but it's also really interesting. And then it allows me to kind of see some patterns across the different types of companies, but also some differences in how you have to handle that. You can't just treat it all the same.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think that's right. And Vanessa, where would you say, I mean, given that board members are wrestling with all of this like everyone else, where do you think they're getting their information about generative AI? And is it generally good information, bad information? I mean, the obvious answer is they're getting it from the AI itself.
Jake, I think it is truly a combination, and it depends on the board member and how. You have some individuals who are just very driven to learn on their own, independent learners and curious, and that's true at the board level as well. I feel like some of our board members are that I work with are very much out there reading everything they can about AI. They're consuming it. They are talking to the executive team members and having one-on-one meetings with them to understand things better. I think some board members are a little bit more, they'll sit back and they'll consume the information that the CTO or the CIO of the organization provides them. So they're not as, I wouldn't say they're as aggressive as in terms of getting the knowledge. Everybody is different. I think, there's so much information out there right now. It's just crazy to like, there isn't, I wouldn't say one thing. I think the executive team, the C-level team, they get a lot of information from vendors and get a lot of education relative to vendors' presentations.
How many do you think are using it themselves? Because, certainly I know I discovered and I find that it is the only way to really learn what AI is capable of is by using it. And there's no matter how many, sales pitches one sits through, no matter how many articles one reads, if you haven't used it yourself, I feel like it's very hard to get a handle on what the transformation looks like. And I'm curious, to the extent that boards are responsible for kind of, setting direction and then having the executive team and the C-suite execute on that. Do you think it's important for directors to use AI themselves? And how many do you think are doing so? I don't have to ask you. I'm fully confident you are fully immersed in it. Although are you is the question.
Actually, there is a caveat to that in the sense of, because I'm a cybersecurity person as well. I am very cautious of AI, and I hear about openly. Just yesterday, I was in a board meeting, and one of the board members was talking about OpenClaw and how they're using it for everything, and I'm like,
So
okay,
you
but
don't have an OpenClaw running on your personal Mac somewhere with
no,
full
I don't.
access to everything? I don't
No,
blame you.
no, I don't.
Neither. My story on OpenClaw is that I installed it, started it up on my personal MacBook, and then shut it down after like an hour after just being like, you know what, I don't think this is a good idea. And then promptly, the major AI companies started kind of filtering out safer versions of that, like Claude Dispatch.
Yeah. I think it's gonna, I mean, the excitement around AI is, we all know this. We've seen it in cybersecurity over and over again. The new technology that it has all the promise of delivering, everything that will make your life completely different. And it goes through its period of, really bumpy roads. A big cyber incident occurs, everybody pulls back, everybody like it's just in that same state. And I'm cautious personally with it. I mean, I use it. But I don't have my own personal agent because I don't want to give it access to everything that I need to in my life. And so that's But to answer your question, Jake, yeah, I think every board member should be doing research, leveraging AI, should use different models to see how they respond. For example, I was using ChatGPT for a while, paid version, and it started to all the answers it started to give me were basically in the context of me being a board member. And I'm like, even some personal, more personal. And I'm like, I don't want everything in the context of me being a board member. So, and then I switched to Claude. I'm using Claude. It hasn't done that yet to me.
Oh,
So,
but it will unless you've turned off memory.
oh, I did turn off memory, so maybe that's why it's not doing
That
it.
is why. Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it? So okay.
And so to your question, I do think every board member should be using it, should see the potential of it, and should be talking to some people who maybe are using it in a more, I would say, risky way, and just kind of understand how use cases that are picking up for people, and of ultimate customers. So that is yeah. I mean, you have to dive into a little bit. I don't, depending on your risk tolerance, how much is the question.
Yeah. Well, let's move into the kind of meat of the episode, which is I think the 3 ways. Well, actually, Kip, why don't you do this part, since otherwise I'm just literally stealing your lines, which I'm happy to do.
Oh, well, that's okay, because I can steal your lines also. I mean, it's
It is.
fair is fair, right? And I
Yeah,
know
and
exactly what you're supposed to say.
Yeah, and I think after 210 episodes, we don't even need a script to steal each other's lines. It just kind of happens
Not to steal
naturally.
each other's lines, no.
Yeah.
Stay on track, yes. I don't think that's ever going to go away. So
No, that will not.
Okay. So listen, when we were doing show prep, Vanessa, you were describing 3 ways that boards look at generative AI. You were seeing 3. And anyways, I just thought our listeners would really appreciate hearing you kind of walk us through that, please.
Yeah. So there's so much activity around, what are we doing with AI? Even boards pushing management to do stuff with AI. And I started to think well, there's actually 2 big categories around AI, and then one of them has a couple of different aspects to it. So the first kind of category I would say is saving money, right? Like boards want to save money. They want to get more efficient. And there's a way to do that. One is outright, I'd say, cost reduction, which is hey, instead of having this person's full time doing this job, I'm just going to create an agent and it's going to do that job, and now I could lay that individual off, which is straight cost reduction. Now, the other aspect of this kind of saving money is the delayed or unnecessary hiring of additional individuals. For example, I was going to hire, 5 more people in the group, but because of AI, I can augment my current workforce and I no longer need to hire 5. Maybe I only need to hire 1. So that's to me like a cost avoidance
Hmm.
aspect. But again, the bottom line, it hits the financials in a positive way by reducing your overall expense. So that's like one of the big areas. And I think a lot of organizations, the easy ones, it's easier to do to kind of take this approach with AI at a board level. But the real, I feel, benefit that boards are looking for is how can AI either help us optimize our current product set or services, or create new products and services that weren't possible before AI. Those are the true revenue generation components of AI. And I think that's what boards are more excited about, but they realize it's going to take more time. So it's they want both the cost reductions, but they want the revenue generation.
It's interesting. The only thing we really hear about in the news and social media is the cost reduction, right? And not too much uh, in comparison from new products and service optimization. At least that's what I see.
Yeah, and I think it's because you can never go wrong in the media making people angry or upset, and focusing on negative cost reduction um, is a good way to do that. I think what's interesting too is that there's a lot of headlines that when you dig into the facts don't necessarily hold up under scrutiny. Many mass layoffs easier to blame on AI because allegedly everyone's doing it, but in fact, um, it's more complicated than that. Now, I think there are layoffs that have occurred because of the cost of AI, but that's a relatively small number of companies that are experiencing that compared to the companies we went through kind of a historical overhiring phase during COVID, and I think you're seeing a lot of correction from that. Nonetheless, the idea that cost reduction and human augmentation are two sides of the same coin is super powerful, right? I mean, how often do you get how often do you save money and get better output? Like that normally doesn't happen, right? And that's one of the main things that I've been trying to explain to folks at in law firms, which is AI makes you faster and better, right? It's usually in the
It can
most
be
of the
both.
time it's always, yeah, you can be both. Usually in the past it's always been faster or better. Like those used to be mutually exclusive. They are not, and I
I,
think that is a critical component for boards to begin to understand. I think thinking about it as a cost reduction only is just kind of the like. I mean, that's an immature way to use AI and think about AI.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you, Jake. I think there's a couple of aspects of human augmentation, though. One is great. The people who have their jobs, they get to keep their jobs, and they're probably higher more. They have up leveled their own skills by adopting AI, and they'll probably become more marketable to other organizations. So that's good and positive. I mean, I think the challenge is and we don't need to, this is a whole probably podcast on its own,
It
but
is.
what happens to the entry level roles? And this is plaguing I think about the legal field as well and others that are being hit. Like, why do I need to have these interns? Why do I need to have, like, so what happens? So that's a
Yeah,
larger
and
issue that,
that's really that's a question of augmentation versus automation, right?
yes.
You generally want there are things you want to automate away, and I think the question of anything you can automate away, I think you have to ask the question, how valuable? Well, it may be very valuable, but does it need a human? And I think again we're in that transition period. Transitions are always hard.
Yes. Yeah. Also, I would say that, in fact, I do think, like I was talking to a startup, because it's part of my role as a venture partner at Flying Fish. partners is I do talk to a lot of startups in this space, and one of the questions I've started to ask them is, what percent of your code is AI generated? And like, if we had asked this question 2 years, it wouldn't even been a question 2 years, right?
No.
Okay, so they often, when I talked to, they said 30% right now, and they're a very small team, like very small. And I was like, okay, well, why isn't higher? And they said, because we want to make sure that this is done right, and we can't completely allocate 100% at this point. The foundation of the code needs to be high quality, and they said in a year it'll be 100%. So it's an interesting, like, would 30%, I mean, they would have probably had to hire a couple more people, probably, maybe, I don't know. It's hard to say exactly. But then their cost curve going into the future is going to be significantly less with a more mature product. So they needed the humans to build the high quality product right now, but they're not going to need them as much for the future of the company.
Well, and I think people and boards in particular will need to recalibrate how many people are required to build a company. I mean, we've heard about the hypothetical billion-dollar unicorn with one employee. Maybe not quite yet, but like I do believe that's possible. And I think in the interim, boards need to consider, not so much, oh, I need so many fewer people, but instead focus on how much more can a given team do. And that's really, I think there's this tension between, optimizing what you have, which I think optimization is going to lead to reduction and automation as opposed to something new, which could expand opportunity and revenue streams and all of that stuff. And that really is the tension there, is, the save money versus make money AI investment.
I think there's also another dimension to this, which we have to think about, which is, am I optimizing a process that was created prior to generative AI?
Oh yeah, that's a really important one.
Versus, am I optimizing the process assuming that generative AI will play a major role in how that work gets done? Because one thing that I'm definitely seeing is the value of human involvement isn't really in the production area. I think generative AI is really driving production costs, especially for knowledge work, like down to practically zero. Where I think human beings really make a lot of sense and will continue to make sense is judgment, is specification, is deciding what should we build and then what should it look like. Because if you can't do a good job of that, then generative AI is just going to produce slop. I think that's why we see a lot of slop, is because there's not enough human involvement saying what should be made and what should it look like.
Yeah, that's a huge part of it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there. You both were talking about. I think we don't really know, like right now, what it's all the endpoint on this. I think that's some of the challenge for boards, is the unknowns and the unpredictability of exactly where this is going to land.
Well,
I mean, we have counter aspects to it too. Like, things I think about as a board member is, if we adopt all this AI, what is the cost of the AI? Like, a lot of people thought cloud was going to save a ton of money. And in fact, I mean, it's given you a lot of flexibility, scalability, all that, but it's still very expensive. And actually, so what does that look like? What should an organization, I think as a board member, should an organization ratchet back their implementation of AI and do it in a more thoughtful, progressive way? Because if everybody's using it, what are the costs to the business of that? The licensing, the token costs, like that's a real cost that I don't think we have any good handle on yet.
No, I think token cost is being subsidized by massive investor money right now.
Oh, currently
and
it absolutely is.
No one's paying, the full load for tokens, and so it'll be interesting to see what happens when that changes. But But moving the conversation along here a little bit, because I want to be mindful of the time. Uh, Vanessa, what about fear? Is there, is there an element of fear here at the board level, for example? Hey, we can't sit still in this AI thing. What if our competitors figure it out before we do? Then we're gonna get all messed up, and we're gonna lose our ability to compete. Is that going on?
Yeah, I think I don't know, fear. Yeah, I guess you could call it fear, but
Well, I
it's
don't want to disparage people and say that they're slaves to fear,
yeah, yeah.
but
There- there's fear you might miss something really big that's consequential to the entire company. Yeah, that is a reality. Like I feel like we all know the Blockbuster story, but like I feel like there's so many Blockbusters out there right now. They have no idea, or they're just beginning to realize that they're going to be out of business in a year or two. Like
Well,
and the boards are probably like really like struggling with what the heck do we do? So
and that's one of the reasons why I think it's so important for board members to be, frankly, to use it themselves. I had an experience at one of our recent events where a partner, I sat through probably 45 minutes of an hour-long workshop that was about, just using AI, and I thought we were all on the kind of the same basic page about what we were talking about and what the capabilities were. But around that 45-minute mark, he said, "No, wait a second. Are you saying that I can take a complicated financial loan instrument, put it into AI, and the AI will read it, give me feedback, and help redline it?" And I was like, for a moment, I was stunned because I'm like, I thought yes. I mean, that is what I'm saying. But I'm like, I thought that I thought we all had agreed on that we knew that was that. And he was like, and as he kind of went on, he was like, it never occurred to me that that would even be possible. And so
wow.
I'm like, this is a real problem because, I can sit there and I can say, just use it. And I can tell you to experiment and go try things. But if particularly as a board member, if you don't even have a baseline expectation or understanding of what the AI can do, you literally cannot imagine what's going to happen to your business. And I
yeah,
think that is, that is the
And how can you
Blockbuster
manage the
moment.
risk of things you don't understand?
You can't. And
that's
I
where
think,
the anxiety comes from
yes.
on boards, because they do they understand at a high level that that is the situation. They're grappling with how do we deal with it. So that fear, anxiety, I would call it anxiety actually, if I had
Maybe a
to
rational fear, anxiety. Sure. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Cool. You're the board member. I'm not. You can characterize it the way you want to. That's cool. Um, all right. So, I appreciate the perspective there on just concerns about remaining competitive. Given that this is a transformative technology that's coming out. Now let's transition here to kind of another facet of this. So, because you've been on both sides as a board member and as a CISO, um, if you're the board member receiving the CISO briefing, like what do you expect? What do you want a senior technology leader? Let's say it's a company that doesn't have a CISO or something like that, but whoever is providing the thought leadership internally, on AI and AI risk management. I mean, what is it that you need from them? Because I think our listeners would love to be better tuned there.
Yeah, I mean, what I would like to see from senior technical leaders, whether CTO, CISO, other CIO, is a level of focus and discipline on what they're presenting. So thoughtful projects, initiatives with really well articulated outcomes that they would like to achieve. Not trying to boil the ocean and do everything all at once, because I know that is very challenging to do. and also someone based in the reality of the current what foundation they're building off. Like technical debt could be a huge impediment to adoption of AI, and like I want to hear from a leader who understands the technical debt. Most companies have technical debt, and how they are going to navigate the implementation of AI while addressing that technical debt. And so to me, it's a lot of focus, a lot of strategic thought into where they envision their organization, the company to be relative to this in the future, and why they believe that this is the right one. I am not a big believer of, like, in cyber, Kip, we always have the kind of well, what are other companies doing that are similar to us? I mean, I just don't feel that as a board member that's very useful to me at all. I want to know, more specifically for our organization and the challenges we have, which are very different, some very similar challenges, but also very different challenges. Like, what is the right plan and approach for our company?
Taking into account your distinctiveness.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes a lot of
Your
sense.
distinctiveness can be both, can be a thing that costs you more to do things, but it also can be an advantage depending on what that distinctiveness.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'm willing to spend more on something. Yeah, I'm a small business owner, right? So I have to think about how is cyber risk opportunities different? Why would somebody choose us instead of one of our competitors? And so I often think about things like, maybe I should spend an extra dollar per widget because that actually translates into more revenue. And so, optimizing on cost reduction could actually result in decreased revenue because we're just not as attractive, we're not as distinctive. And so you've got to be thoughtful about distinctiveness. And I got to say, before I owned my own business, I don't know that I understood that. It's really, I think back to when I was an in-house CISO and how hard it was for me to understand the mind of the business leaders and how they were trying to make good decisions for their brand, for their customers. It just wasn't an experience that I'd ever really had. And so that was just an ongoing challenge.
The other big thing that I think about if we have a technology leader coming to present is we as a board have made this investment in all this tooling, like all kinds of tooling, whether it's security tooling, it could be, infrastructure tooling, etc. Like, how are you leveraging that tooling? What needs to happen? Like, how are you helping preserve the investment while moving forward into this new world? Now, it might be maybe not something a board wants to hear, but it might be saying that we can't use this tool going forward. I think it's okay to say that. And I also think you need to really put thought into, why is it not okay? What did you miss? What did you miss when you picked that tooling? Are you going to blame the vendor for this? Or is it
always blame the vendor?
Yeah, exactly. That's the easy way. And that's that to me, when you just blame the vendor, I as a board member, but that's, obviously this has to do with my background. They always lose a little bit of credibility because it's, the vendor takes active management. A vendor is, you just don't put it in place and like everything's supposed to be wonderful. Right. So I think, that's also like, how are you going to preserve, or how are you going to continue to utilize our already invested capital in this business? Or now are we just saying that's all throwaway? And if you say it's all throwaway, I'm going to be like, why is it all?
Yeah, you better explain that to me. Listen, we haven't mentioned it yet, but you, Vanessa, have an article that should be publishing just a few days before this episode is released. Did you want to say a word or two about that?
Well, yeah, I'm just I've got an ongoing series of articles around different perspectives as me as a board member, and in my approach to different topics, that like AI is one of them, cyber. But I've got this upcoming article that's going to be talking about some of the issues facing boards and all this change and AI. And so, yeah, that's going to be coming out soon. And
Where should people look for it at?
I'll be posting on my LinkedIn.
Okay, great. For those of you who are listening to this audio only, then you can go to my LinkedIn profile and you can actually access this video recording. And if you look in the notes, in the comments, I've actually put Vanessa's profile link in there as well as her website, and I'll add it to the show notes as well. So no excuse for not reading Vanessa's insightful article when it comes out. Okay.
Definitely. Excellent.
Well, so Jake, what about
governance?
Should
we govern it? So governance is a word that it gets bandied about all the time. There's always governance, compliance, regulatory, all these kinds of issues. And look, as we kind of almost led with, we were talking about OpenClaw. Generative AI has major risks. It can be incredibly powerful. It is incredibly powerful. And with great power comes great responsibility, thanks to Uncle Ben. And
Marvel reference, everybody.
Marvel reference, yeah. I would imagine that 90% plus of our listeners got that reference. So what does good governance look like at the board level? And what does it even mean to govern AI?
Yeah, so I think it's in process. I mean, I think organizations are struggling with what that structure looks like. I think we always start with policies and like standards and stuff like that, and I think that's important, especially for audits. But we all know that policies exist, things are written down, but that doesn't always mean the employees do exactly what they should do. I think the first challenge with policies is people even reading them. I mean, coming from cybersecurity, most people don't even read the policy, or the standards. So there has to be that's like something, a legacy thing we put in place. I'm not sure how effective it is at governance. I think what I'm starting to see, because AI is so spread out through the enterprise, is the need for some clear roles and responsibilities, like accountability. So some of the boards, some of the companies I'm involved with, they have one individual who is like the AI accountable person. Some have a council that they put in place for governance, which is like more of a cross-functional, like business participants from different areas, of the organization, who get together and they collectively make decisions around AI. They address issues around AI. And then obviously the ultimate decision authority around the risk around AI does, there could be a management team who kind of, I call it, pre-processes the risk, decides like, hey, this is important enough, we need to bring it to the risk committee of the board, or maybe it's a full board issue that needs to be addressed. But I think that's kind of how I see it working right now. Whether or not this is the right structure for governance with AI, I don't know yet. Like we're still in the early days of it. And I think we are struggling with some aspects in general of the organization, and the employers are moving at one pace and the boards are moving at a slightly slower pace. So like, what is the gap that is developing right now? And that is something I think about.
Yeah, it's a huge question. So, what about, like, I know we're starting to run out of time here. So what is the one governance question every board should be asking about Gen AI right now?
One governance question.
And no compound questions. I will object.
Yeah, one question. I would say, where are all the places we are using AI today?
That's a good question.
And maybe how much we're spending on it?
Huh?
Nope, compound question.
Oh, no, that's my question. How much are we spending on it?
That's your question. I do think that I do think shadow AI, asking about shadow AI can be part of Vanessa's question. I think that is one question still. Where are we using AI, whether we know it or know it and have approved it or not is the real critical question. And I'm just gonna call that one question, because I think that shadow IT was the bane of existence for every CISO for many years, particularly as cloud stood up.
Still is.
It still is, Kip. We still talk to clients.
I will just say I don't like the term shadow because I don't really like shadow IT was when I many years ago I was like I just don't like that term. What it represents to me, what's happening in the business back in that context was the technology team wasn't keeping pace with the business, and therefore the business decided I'm going to just start doing this myself. And then we all of a sudden said it was a bad thing when actually it wasn't necessarily a bad thing. It was the technology team not keeping up with the business. So I'm not saying it didn't cause potential risks, all that, but I think the real root of the problem is the technology teams are out of, like they were out of touch with the criticality of what the business needed.
And I completely agree that's a diagnosis for how we get to shadow IT and shadow AI, but I still think that the phrase shadow is helpful because it happens in the shadows, and that creates a massive quantity of risk that has to be governed. And that's, now I'm speaking as the the compliance lawyer in the room, because it particularly with AI, right? It goes so far beyond so far beyond one or two topics. It includes IP issues and confidentiality issues and privacy and obviously cybersecurity as well. So, but I think that is nonetheless the core question. Where are we using AI?
Yeah, it also goes to just generally, and I mentioned in my article, like having a culture over controls. Like a culture is much more powerful in my mind than a set of controls. And I think that's the challenge cyber has faced and is the same challenge AI is facing. Like, how do we get to the lowest levels, a culture of, responsible use of AI, following, asking questions about guardrails and like when somebody I was just a couple of days ago was talking about how they're implementing at their developer level, each developer is their own vulnerability management and remediation. They are accountable for it, not the security team. They are accountable for it. So it's
really like that.
Pushing
that's really good.
In the importance of, like, as we have to push this down, and we tried to do it with security, cybersecurity. I think with AI, we have, like, there are a lot of similarities between the journey with cybersecurity and the journey we're going through right now with AI.
And what I tell my customers is you really want to put the enforcement and the controls into the arms of the frontline supervisors, because that, I think, is where cultural boundaries and practices are really rooted more than anywhere else, is in the frontline supervisor. Because if I walk up to somebody, an individual contributor, and I say, hey, you should use a password manager. Well, who the hell am I, right? They're going to look directly at their supervisor and say, do I have to do that thing that Kip said? Because, Kip doesn't write my performance review, and he doesn't decide my bonus. But if I do what he says, it's going to ruin my productivity. So anyway,
although I think, like, I would question in the age of AI and this is, again, this could be a completely different podcast, but the entire structure of organizations is no longer going to work. This hierarchy that we have and the way we get work done is,
that assumes an AI native architecture for the business.
It does.
Yes.
Doesn't it? Yeah. Okay. So until we get that.
But there is, like, how do we evolve our current organizational structures as we adopt AI to really optimize AI? Like, that's
hard.
We have to.
Really hard.
We're probably going to have to get there because, like, it's in order for it to truly work and embed itself into every process of the business. It's gonna going to have implications to the structure.
Maybe we need more, Nokia, bankruptcies to send a signal to the rest of the market that like you can't ignore this. This is for real.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, that's kind of it's been things like that that I think has caught people's attention in the past when transformative technologies have rolled out and people are going, I don't know if I should do anything about that or not. And something big happens and they're like, oh, I guess I should. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah,
don't
no,
know.
it's are you waiting to are you going to wait too long
Yeah.
to is your own but it's a balance, right? You don't want to be like, I really don't believe it. There's a whole lot of a benefit for most organizations to be on the bleeding edge right now. It's too uncertain.
Well, what a great way to wrap up the episode on that note. I really appreciate the fact that you were here, Vanessa. Thanks so much for coming back on our show. Again, we're going to put your LinkedIn profile, your website, into the show notes. When your article drops later in May of 2026, I encourage people to check it out. Anyway, that wraps up this episode
Thank
of the
you.
Cyber Risk Management Podcast. Today, we talked about how boards of directors are actually thinking about generative AI, things like cost reduction, human augmentation, two sides of the same coin. And what about, the growth of new products and services? We touched on competitive anxiety. I won't use the F word. And related things. And we did that with our guest, Vanessa Pigueros. Thanks, Vanessa. We'll see you next time, everybody.
See you
Thank you.
next time.